talk right. You sound funny. Why are you speaking as though you're uneducated? For many African Americans, including myself, these sentences are merely common everyday occurrences. Maybe they say cuz instead of because, or maybe they say ax instead of ask, but it's something that we've all grown up hearing. And if hip hop is the most popular genre of music, why is this shaming of African Americans still prevalent in society? And what if I were to tell you that this was merely an innovation of the English language? Well, maybe that's true. Firstly, let's give this dialect of speech a name. AAVE, the acronym for African American Vernacular English, formerly known as Ebonics. To understand just how this came to be, we must first look at the 17th century plantations during the colonial periods, as slavery had just arisen in the Americas. Oftentimes, families were torn apart and those who spoke the same language were separated. So many slaves who were illiterate at the time had to pick up the language of those around them. This is why AAVE reflects the English grammatical system as well as is a dialect of English language. And it is also the only dialect of English that is not native to a specific region of users, with New England accents coming from the New England region, Bay Area accents coming from, well, the Bay Area, and yes, what I'm sure you're all quite familiar with here in Georgia, the lovely Southern accent. However, this took a change in the 1950s and 1960s with what is referenced by many historians as the Great Migration. The Great Migration references a period in which many African Americans left the sharecropping South in pursuit of factory jobs westward in cities like Los Angeles and San Francisco, as well as northwards with cities like Chicago, Detroit, Cleveland, and even Boston. And the language moved with them, and as many became more educated and were able to write, this dialect took on a written form. Here are some everyday phonetics of AAVE, and you might even know some of your own personally. As I did state, it is found in popular culture and in many of the songs you may listen to currently. Firstly, there is a dropped L sound in words like help becoming hep, and there is a dropped R sound in words like your becoming yo, and the suffixes are also relatively different. The TH sound often becomes a CH sound in words like with, and the SK sound becomes a KS sound in words like ask becoming ax. Here are some of my favorite uses of AAVE. When you first get home and you're putting up the groceries and you say, I'm put both of them on the counter. When you need to call back that relative and you say, I'ma call her later. And yes, my favorite, when your grandmother's picking on you and your mother says, leave that po child alone. AAVE is especially predominant in hip hop, rap, as well as R&B, with many artists using it as a way to associate with their culture. AAVE oftentimes helps to form a sense of identity. However, many people say that AAVE is simply a degradation of music, and some have even been quoted to have said that hip hop has done more damage in recent years has done more damage to African Americans than racism in recent years. However, as some shame its use, others applaud it, with Kendrick Lamar Duckworth, professionally known as Kendrick Lamar, winning a Pulitzer Prize for his 5th studio album. The Pulitzer Prize is usually awarded to those who are jazz musicians or classical musicians, but Kendrick Lamar made history in 2017 when he became the first hip-hop musician to receive such an accreditation. Kendrick Lamar, of his piece, was recorded by the judging committee to have said that it was a virtuistic collection of vernacular authenticity of the African American experience and hardships. Kendrick Lamar can have been quoted to have said in the song, and if Anthony killed Ducky, Top Dog will be serving life while I grew up without a father and died in a gunfight, which is in his song entitled Duckworth, his homage to his family name and how many circumstances led him to become who he was with his newfound success. So, as you can see here, and if Anthony killed Ducky replaces the verb killed, dropping off the ed suffix, Top Dog will be serving life. You can see that the G is dropped off in the word serving, becoming servin. And while I grew up without a father and died in a gunfight, the D being dropped off of the word died. And although there are a lot of irregularities in this, Kendrick Lamar has been known to take on many, many adverse topics, ranging from police brutality to belief in a higher power such as a god, and even depression. Furthermore, as previously stated, there is a relevancy of Black identity in the songs, with them being the most popular artists of the genre. And this is a lot of the reason why you can play a lot of songs with sampling or even old hits, because streaming is so common nowadays. You can hear your dad say, "Girl, what you know about this?" A second aspect of AAVE that greatly differs from that of Standard English, the most common dialect of English, is the use of double negatives. Double negatives, an example of this would be, I don't have nothing. I don't have nothing in Standard English says, I have something. The two negatives canceling one another out, simply like in math. However, I don't have nothing in AAVE is a reaffirmation of the statement, I don't have anything. Reaffirmation works in English typically as the word very, in Spanish as the word muy, and in French as the word très. And no, I've never seen a French class in my life. This was patented by Robert Loth, who was an English professor who attended Oxford, and he was a prominent figure of the Catholic Church, and he wrote the novel A Short Introduction to English Grammar with critical notes. And this took a lot of influence around the 18th century as linguistic structure came to be. Notable users of the double negatives include Shakespeare and Chaucer, who are currently literary greats, and I've just completed reading Romeo and Juliet in my 9th grade literature class, and believe it or not, he did in fact do this. And it can be quoted in Richard III, where he has been quoted to have said, I never was nor never will be. However, I think a lot of teachers might have a problem with the statement of Coolio, ain't no party like a West Coast party, because a West Coast party don't stop. Another aspect of AAVE innovating and adding to the English language is its use of tenses. Now, in English, as well as a few other languages, including Spanish, there are 3 main tenses outside of the infinitive. These are past, present, and future tense. But in AAVE, there is what is referenced as an occasional tense, which is not currently found in the English language as we know it. However, I will give an example of such. Using the verb to swim. The past tense of to swim in AAVE is he swam. The present tense, he swimmin', the future tense, he gon' swim, and he be swimmin' works as an occasional tense, translating in Standard English to he swims occasionally. Now, you may argue that you just said he swims occasionally, there was no AAVE there. However, you have to change the verb that is being used in that sentence for that conjugation to work as such. Here, I can use A$AP Ferg, who is currently a part of the rap group A$AP Mob, where he's quoted to have said, Fergie be mobbin' all day, where an occasional tense is used. And I don't exactly know what mobbin' means, but sure does sound cool in the car. Furthermore, what I'd like to conclude from the use of AAVE in English language is that it adds a cultural importance to many of its users, as when African Americans originally arrived in the Americas, there wasn't a lot of culture for us to have after it was written for centuries after centuries. Furthermore, it gives us a reclamation of our heritage and our culture, and we can help identify with those who use it as well. Furthermore, it influences popular culture in hip-hop, R&B, and rap, as according to Billboard, it's the most popular genre of music by sales and downloads. I would also like to add that AAVE should not be seen as degrading of the English language, because just like any other language, it adds to how people connect to one another. It also has its own sense of grammatical structures and how words can be used, and many people who identify and use AAVE can hear exactly when it's being used improperly. Thus, if you were to compare Tagalog to Dutch to German or any other language that I might have failed to mention thus far, it's simply unfair because each language was made uniquely by its own unique users for its own unique purposes. And that should apply to any dialect of English or any dialect of language or any language. Thank you.